Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Welcome everybody. Our speaker today is Roger Corless, aka Dharma Daddy. He's written frequently for the newsletter. He's spoken here several times. He's Professor Emeritus from Duke University, where he taught in the religion department. Is that the name of the department? And we're having a series of talks over the next several weeks on addiction, and I'll let Roger introduce his subject today.
Yeah, thank you. Before I start, people are concerned about my health, which I'm very touched at the support I'm getting. And the latest thing, of course, is dealing with the loss of vision, and the latest tests, which aren't complete yet, down in Stanford, show that part of what might be going on is an autoimmune reaction to the cancer, which is destroying the retina. This is a rare condition, but at Stanford they've got people that know about this, so we're still looking into it to see if that's the case. And if it is the case, then there may be some way to stop the degeneration. And if it can stop, then I can work with what I've got. Otherwise, I don't know what's going on. So stay tuned. I guess we say we'll see what happens. You're apparently going to have a series of speakers on addiction, and I'm in a sense starting the series off. There'll be a gap apparently next week. Something else will happen, but then you'll have the series from there. And I like to reflect on samsara or sansara as addiction. To put addiction in context, because I think addiction to a particular person, place or thing is only a kind of microcosm of our addiction to life and death. And once we're released from the particular addiction, then we can look at the larger issue of our life as a whole. Samsara, S-A-M-S-A-R-A, is a Sanskrit word that is used for the cycle of life and death, and it literally means constantly moving. Sara is from a root meaning to move, and sam is an intensifier. So it's constantly moving. It's the experience that we have that we've never finished. I like to think of it as like laundry. No matter how diligent we are with doing laundry, we never finish it. And life as a whole is like that. We've always got more to do, and then there's consequences of that, and so there's more to do because of the consequences of all of that. In general, in the Buddhist tradition, this is put in the context of rebirth, but it's not necessary. It's not necessary to accept the notion of rebirth in order to see that samsara is. We live in a situation where we've got things to do and we never finish. It just makes it a bit more awesome if we think that after we die we still haven't finished, we've got more stuff to do. And so addiction will probably be defined for you in various ways by the various speakers, and I like to say that addiction is occurring when a person, place, or thing it becomes more and more central to our lives, and increasing contact with that person, place, or thing produces decreasing satisfaction, and the quality of our life as a whole goes down. So with that sort of heading, then we'll get into the substance of the talk, and I'm going to use the so-called wheel of existence, or wheel, sometimes called the wheel of life, Bhava Chakra. I don't know whether you can see it from back there. This is the largest picture that's able to get. I don't think there's one in the room. It wouldn't be unusual to find a version of this in a shrine room. It's specifically emphasized in Tibet, but there are examples in Theravada. I've seen one in the Thai tradition, which is somewhat the same. It's a little bit different, but it is basically the same. It's a circle representing the circularity of existence, that when we finished one thing we go to the next thing and then the next thing, and it is it is being turned around by a kind of monster. I don't know whether the monster has a name. I've asked various teachers and they don't seem to know, but anyhow it's some kind of a monster which symbolizes decay, that everything we do eventually decays. Those of you who are fortunate enough to possess a copy of my book, you will find that there is a picture of this on page 147 with an explanation on one side, and then there is a longer explanation of the 12-fold cycle of interdependence, which I want to speak about on another page, whose number I cannot read without special aid, 199 to 200. So if you have my book, you can go back and look at that later, and you'll get quite a lot of information on it if you use it as a focus of what is called analytic meditation. In the Tibetan tradition, some forms of meditation are called analytic, which means that we take a topic and we sort of roll it around in our minds slowly and investigate it from all angles and really see it, really look at it. It's somewhat different from stabilizing the mind on the moment, but the mind must be stable in order to look at this thing from all aspects and really come to a realization of what is going on. The wheel of existence, as I say, is often called the wheel of life, but I think the word life is a bit too upbeat. This means just going on and going on. So wheel of existence, or more, it could also be called the wheel of becoming. Bhava is to become, is becoming. A chakra is a wheel. This is supposedly, in the Tibetan tradition, there is a legend that this was specifically designed by the Buddha as a teaching to a king, and that's what this text is all about, the wheel of life and King Odrayana. So if you're interested in this, and especially if you read Tibetan, you've got the Tibetan text here, so you've got everything. But this isn't a difficult book. It's a very accessible book, and it's quite relevant to our daily life. Whether or not it came directly from the Buddha, it is a wonderful aid to teaching and to learning about the Dharma. I could give a series of talks, in fact I could give a retreat on this wheel of life, wheel of existence, and we still would not get into all of the aspects of it. So what it's trying to do is to give a teaching in pictures of how our life is, and before we start to practice, and what we can do about it, and where the problems come from. And so at the middle, you will find three animals which are eating each other or chasing each other. These represent the three poisons, as they're called in the Chinese tradition. They're called the three afflictive emotions, maybe we can say, three kleshas in Sanskrit. The Chinese call them sandu, the three poisons, and they are the heart of the whole thing. If you've got that, really you've got the rest of it. And the rest of it is really expansion from there, explaining more what's going on. So the three poisons are raga, dvesha, moha. Raga is a Sanskrit word meaning in this context compulsive lust or greed. Some of you may know about Indian music, and then you've heard the word raga used in a less scary way as being kind of the mode of the music, almost like the key signature in some way. But in the Buddhist tradition, raga is this intense desire or attachment, the feeling that I must have such a thing, a person, place or thing, or I will not be happy. And if I do, I will be happy. I will be not just happy for a moment, but I will be completely happy. This will solve all my problems. If only I can get this particular person, place or thing in my life, then I will be entirely happy. And then on the other hand, dvesha, D-V-E-S-H-A, is the opposite of that unless I can get rid of that particular person, place or thing, I will never be happy. So it's a passionate detachment. It's can be called hate or aversion. I want to point out that detachment is regarded in Buddhism as one of the poisons, one of the problems. Sometimes I hear it said that the teaching of Buddhism is to be detached. I think that's a real misunderstanding. I prefer the term non-attachment. In non-attachment, we are entirely absorbed in the moment. We are entirely present with the moment. But when that moment passes, we don't cling to it. So it's not at all I don't care what goes on. It is total involvement in what is actually happening, but not trying to cling to the past and the future. So detachment is a most unfortunate translation of that, and the detachment is more for this difficulty. And the third element is moha, M-O-H-A, which is confusion, befuddlement. It's compared to drunkenness, where we're really not sure what's going on, and we mistake things for something else. We mistake reality. One of the fundamental teachings of the Buddha is that we think that reality is a certain way, and it really isn't. And so, because of this mistaking of reality, we pursue certain things as essential to our lives and try to get rid of other things which we think are non-essential. The symbolism of these things is raga is represented by the cock. Sometimes people prefer to say rooster, but I think that it helps us to remember that it is associated with lust if we call it the cock. Then advesha, or hate, is represented by the snake. Occasionally in Buddhism, the snake is a wise animal, but in this case, it's being used to show hate. It's the idea of a snake as being trying to attack you and to kill you. So it's expressing hate. And then confusion is represented by the pig. I think it's a bit of a slur on pigs, because there are some very smart pigs, but anyhow, that's what they have picked for that. Now, as we go out from the middle, the next thing we have, which I won't spend much time on, is some people who are going up, where sometimes it's divided into a black and a white thing. Some people are practicing and they're getting better. Some people are just bound by their passions and they're getting worse. So the people who are bound by their passions are all connected with a rope, and it's going further and further down. So I think you can see already how this relates to addiction, because when we are pursuing a person, place, or thing as hope, with the conviction that this will bring me lasting happiness, then we find it doesn't, and so we have to try something else, and then we may start even to hate it, because we can be very happy that something has happened, and then that same thing can become suffering. At some of the restaurants in the area, it will say serving breakfast all day. Well, if we haven't had breakfast, that's very good, and we feel good when we've had breakfast. But if we're forced to eat breakfast all day for 24 hours, after a bit it becomes suffering. And we hate it. We just don't want to see any breakfast ever again. So it doesn't work to pursue these things. We go for something and saying this will give us lasting happiness, but it gives us some happiness. This is the trick, and this is the trick also in addiction, that I don't think anybody grows up and says, "Mommy, I want to be an addict or an alcoholic." But we get into these things, and then they're good. They do help. They make us feel good. But then it reverses, and then we try to stop, and we find we're in this circle of we can't get out. This circle of lust, hate, and confusion, and it runs faster and faster and faster, and there appears to be no way out. Well, there is, and we're going to come to that in a bit. Outside of the small circle of people going up when they're practicing and going down when not practicing, are 6 segments, sometimes it's 5 segments, of realms of rebirth. And at another time I might speak more of what these mean. In traditional Buddhism, there are 6 realms of rebirth which are spoken about. these aren't the only realms of rebirth which there might be, but there are the ones that we can relate to. It's not relevant to my talk today to go into them in detail, but we should look at them briefly. There's the realm of the peaceful deities, where everybody is spaced out on wonderful, beautiful things, music and perfume and beautiful bodies and wonderful weather, and just everybody is in the zone. That's being reborn in the Deva or peaceful deity realm. Then there's the Asura, A-S-U-R-A, the realm of the jealous deities, and this is where I never have enough stuff, and your stuff should come to me, and I want to grab all I can get and get ahead of you. And I think of this as being something like the floor of the stock market, where there's this intense competition. It's also something that you find in the military, and the Asuras are said to be very warlike. Then there's the realm of the animals, which is regarded as being a realm of fear. This is somewhat, we might find some problems with this, but the idea is that it's focusing on nature, as we say, red in tooth and claw. It's focusing on the fact that at the animal level, and especially the insect level, things are eating other things. And your project for the day is not to get your email done, but to avoid being eaten. So that would give us fear if that was if that was the realm we found ourselves in. And then there's the so-called hell realms, which is it's an unfortunate term, I think, but it's more literally it's the unhappy realms, where we are reborn in a humanoid condition, but in conditions of intense suffering. And there's hells which are extremely hot, and hells which are extremely cold, and there's hells of shit, and there's hells of knives, where forested knives, where we're being pursued by dogs, and we have to climb up. We try to escape them by climbing up on trees, and the trees are made of knives, and they cut our feet, and we don't die because it's a mind-made body. Then there's the human realm, which is the realm which is the most fortunate realm in which to be reborn, because it's the one where we have not so much suffering that we're overwhelmed by it, nor so much happiness that we just don't care. We don't believe that there's really any suffering, so we just go on our lives, and if we have too much, if we're in the deity realm, we go on until we die, and then we realize the problem after that. Now, it's not necessary once again to believe in rebirth to find some teaching in this. We can say that as we go through the day, our minds will be reborn as the mind of one of these entities. So if everything is going wonderful, our life is really wonderful, then we're in the Deva realm, and we've just got some new stuff. We've rearranged our house or apartment, and we've redecorated, and we're healthy and vigorous, and we have a new lover or something, and everything is just wonderful. And we don't realize that this will eventually change. As somebody is supposed to have said to Dr. Carl Jung, "Isn't life wonderful, Dr. Jung?" And he said, "I know exactly what you mean, my dear, but 3 days of a head cold entirely changes my opinion." So eventually that will be lost, and even after we've fixed up our apartment just as we like and we have our new lover and all that, eventually we think, well, I don't know, maybe it wasn't so good. So we leave that realm and are born in another realm. We may even find that our mind is born in one of the hell realms. This is, I think, particularly the case if one has some kind of severe mental disorder. I was in the hospital last weekend, once again, this time with a urinary tract infection. What next? And after being in the emergency room for 9 hours, which was something of a hell realm, I was then put into a hospital room, and the poor guy next to me was probably in late stage Alzheimer's, and he was shouting and screaming obscenities to people that only he could see, and then he would get up and piss on the floor, and he was really very unhappy and confused, and it seemed to me that he was existing in the hell realm, although he was physically in the human condition, and he couldn't. It was difficult to penetrate that. I mean, the nurses did their best, but they really couldn't get to him. He was in the hell realm, and that's another thing, that once we get into the cycle of suffering in a very severe way, it's very difficult to get out of it, because there seems to be no light, and we concentrate on that suffering. And then, of course, we can be reborn in the animal realm during the day with some fear of something or another, fear of, especially in our human realm, we have a lot of stuff that we look after. The birds and beasts don't have so much stuff. We have a lot of stuff, so we're always afraid of losing it, and we have to lock things up and so forth. And then in the Asura realm, the realm of the jealous gods, we think, well, I bought this new car, but it's not new enough because my friend has a newer car which is better, and we may even resort to stealing it if we are convinced enough that it will help me. Now in the human realm, the particular problem in the human realm appears to be sex, according to the teaching of the Buddha, because in all of these realms, the Buddha appears in a form that is appropriate to help that particular people in that to help beings in that realm get out of their suffering. So, for instance, in the deity realm, he appears as a musician and plays the most wonderful music, that they all come and surround him and say, "Oh, what does it all mean?" And then he can speak the Dharma to them, and then he comes to dispel fear in the animal realm. He comes as a great soldier to the Asura realm, and he comes to bring a coolness to the hot hells, or warmth to the cold hells. Then in the human realm he appears as a monk, which I think is a significant thing, that if we are unable during our life to come to terms with our sexuality, if we're simply pulled around by it, our suffering will increase. The way in which we come to terms to it is of course a different talk. It's a whole section of Buddhism. So then on the outer wheel, part of the wheel, are 12 pictures which show interdependent arising. It's a fundamental teaching of Buddhism. In fact, it's sometimes said that a test of being enlightened is to understand interdependent arising fully. I translated interdependent arising. Some people call it a codependent arising, but now the word codependent has been given a bad rap. So interdependent arising or origination, in which the term is pratitya samutpada, which means everything arises in conditioned by and conditioning everything else. So whatever we do is done because of certain causes and conditions that influence us. They don't force us. Buddhism teaches freedom of the will, but it teaches us that we don't have as much freedom of the will as we think we have, but we do have some kind of a wiggle room. But we don't have as much room as we would hope, as we think we have. But we can change. The teaching of karma, K-A-R-M-A, is not teaching of fate. It's teaching that all actions have consequences. And so if I'm in a certain situation, there's something I can do about it. How much I can do about it will vary, and sometimes there's not very much I can do. I mean, if you're in hospital, there you are in hospital, and if they didn't put all if the medication that you're supposed to have didn't get on the orders, as it didn't in my case, well, you don't get it, and then there you are. So you have to just kind of say, well, I have to accept that. But often we have more freedom than we think we have. So we're not stuck in our situation. So then on the outside are these 12 pictures symbolizing the wheel of interdependent arising. And I have to have a cheat sheet for this, because no matter how often I try to remember it, I don't get it. It's not entirely logical, and that's okay. It appears that the 12-fold cycle, which is the normal teaching today, has been for hundreds of years, was actually conflated from two sets, two cycles. One, I think, of 5 and one of 7. So if it seems like it's kind of starting over again halfway through, that's probably what you're seeing. So the actual elements of the cycle need not be taken terribly seriously, but the principle that one thing conditions another thing, I think, should be looked at and taken seriously. Now, we normally start with the picture representing avidya, often translated as ignorance, or I would say unawareness. But you don't need to start there. And actually, it makes more sense, I think, to start at the section or limb. They're called the limbs, the 12 limbs of interdependent arising. Limb 8 is Trishna, Trishna, literally meaning thirst. And this is represented by a person having a drink, and obviously wants another one. He's that kind of a person. And that's immediately followed by upadana, U-P-A-D-A-N-A, which is grasping. And that's represented by a human or monkey grasping onto fruit. So it's explained, for instance, by Buddhaghosa that if we're in a desert, we desire a drink, and then that's Trishna, that's the thirst. And then when we get to the oasis, we actually reach out and we have the drink, and that is the upadana. So this would be the desire for something that we think would make us happy, will make us eternally happy, This is the raga or the dvesha happening also, because raga and dvesha are aspects of each other, attachment and aversion, and then the going out and acting on that to get hold of it. So it would seem logically that we could cut the circle at that point. You have a desire for something, but actually you don't need to act on that. But of course, that's the experience of addiction, is that we cannot. If we're able to say no to drugs, then we don't need to say no to drugs, because we don't have a problem with them, or to alcohol. So the experience of addiction is that somehow we're trapped in the cycle, and we have to go on from the desire to the grasping, and conditioned on the grasping then is bhava, B-H-A-V-A, which means becoming. That's to say, we need to keep our life on the go because there's all these things that I need to do and need to get, and I must have them, so I have to keep on living. But also it can mean I'm so averse to everything that happens to me, everything has gone wrong, that I need to get out here, I need to kill myself. So it's both the desire for continued existence or for the annihilation of existence. Buddhism teaches that there's another mode of being, which is liberation from this duality of continued existence forever in this form, or total annihilation. And this is represented by a pregnant woman, as would be pretty obvious. And then, because of the desire for becoming, then there is birth. Because when I die, I want to be born again, because I've got this stuff that I need. I haven't finished. I've got more stuff to do, and that's pictured by a person who's actually giving birth. And then the 12th cycle is jara marana, aging and death. Once we have been born, then the prognosis is poor. We will eventually die, and we start aging and dying immediately. I believe that it's in our middle, sometime in our 20s, we find that the process takes over. They say so that the aging process takes over from the regeneration process, but it's starting from the very beginning. And of course, some children don't live long at all. So we never know when death will occur. We know that it will happen at some point, and so this is represented by a corpse, a man carrying a corpse. So dependent upon that, we come to avidya, which is the unknowing or unawareness. Ignorance, I think, is not quite a good translation, though it's, in a sense, it's more cognate with it. Ignorance, no gnosis. But ignorance we tend to think of as you just don't know, you just don't know a certain fact or something. But avidya means unclarity. Avidya is total clarity, a total understanding of what is going on. It is translated in Chinese, the vidya part, with the word ming, meaning brightness or light. And actually the word avidya, the vid part, is cognate with our English word video. So it's something that you see. And I'm going to come back to that in a moment, because that's the trick. That's the weak point of the wheel. But when avidya, when unawareness continues, as the Chinese will sometimes say, we live in a dream and die drunk, then it leads to and conditioned upon that, there's the rising of samsara, which is samskara. In Hinduism, this has a quite different meaning. So if you know about Hinduism, please ignore that. for this particular meaning in the Buddhist tradition, samskara here means habits that we build up. We go about things in a certain habitual way, which we often think is the only way we can do things. And dependent upon the arising of samskara, which the avidya is represented by a person who is blind, something which I'm beginning to relate to. And the second part, the samskara, is represented by a potter who, from clay that could be anything, is making particular pots, and then they're fired. So we could, in theory, do anything, but we find, in fact, that our actions constrict us so that we only have a certain number of options. Then, conditioned upon that is vijnana, or consciousness, which is represented by a monkey leaping about. Vijnana, in this case, means our everyday mind that is constantly in search of satisfaction here, there, and everywhere. And it doesn't like this, picks up that, drops that, and picks up something else, and is never able to stay settled. And then conditioned upon that as the arising of nama rupa, literally name and form. This is something like mind and body, but it's not mind as disembodied and body as with no mind. In Buddhism, it is taught that if we look, we will see that mind and body are interconnected. So there's no such thing as a disembodied kind of mind, or a living body that has no mind. But we can see that there's certain things which are more mental and more things which are more physical in our condition. And then this eventually can be opened up into the five skandhas and so forth, which I won't do now. The nama rupa is represented by two men in a boat, and then arising, dependent upon that, is the sadayatana, the six bases of sense, represented by a house with six windows. That's to say, the six senses are the five senses we're familiar with in Western tradition, plus the mind, which is regarded as a sense in Buddhism. Because we have the senses, then there's sparsha, or contact, between whatever it is and whatever the sense is. So in the eye, the light and the object going in, and that's represented by a person with an arrow in his eye, not because that's suffering, which it would be, but just to show that the sense data enters into us. And then this is then dependent upon the arising of a touch, or the contact with the sense data. There is a vedana, or the feelings that go around that, which are dependent upon that. And then we've come back to Trishna. Now, the point is that the weak part of the link is the avidya. It is our experience that we cannot break the cycle easily at the heart of it, which is the lust and the grasping. But at the level of avidya, we can. And because it's not, when we say vidya in Buddhism, we don't simply mean understanding intellectually. We might very well know that something is not good for us, but nevertheless we still go with it, because something about it we don't really see how bad it is. So if we can be illuminated by the deep level of the mind, by the Buddha mind, then we will be able to stop the cycle of interdependent arising, because we very clearly see the consequences of this. Now, the stopping of the cycle doesn't necessarily mean that we die. It means that we're able to live in this life without being trapped in the suffering. We will still have some kind of suffering if we're still in this realm, but it won't be as oppressive. And the light of the Buddha mind can be understood in some ways as a higher power. In 12-step programs, which up to now have been the most effective way of persons dealing with addiction and alcoholism, something outside the circle is needed. Gregory Bateson has an article in which he tries to understand the notion, the problem of addiction in terms of a cybernetic loop, a self-sustaining cybernetic loop, which then needs something outside of that, because the loop itself is self-sustaining, and the more we try to stop it, the faster it goes. So something has to be outside the cybernetic loop to stop that, which is his understanding of the higher power. And I think that in the Buddhist tradition, something like the Buddha mind or the mind of clear light could be that. I'll stop there and leave some time for questions. If you have a question, please speak, because I may not be able to see you. But that's also, by the way, if you know me and you smile at me and I don't smile back, I'm not being snooty. I probably can't see you. I think I see a hand. Yes.
My name's Greg. In the book that you're talking about, the big book, or Alcoholics Anonymous, refers that. In the book Alcoholics Anonymous, it talks about a spiritual enlightenment, or once we straighten out spiritually, or once we get our spiritual thing under control, then we straighten out mentally and physically. That would indicate mind and body. What does that mean?
Well, what I'm approaching here is some way to stop the cycle of suffering. And the cycle of suffering continues because we remain in confusion about what will bring us happiness by trying to possess something or not possess something else. And the specific recommendations of the book Alcoholics Anonymous, I think, would be better dealt with by somebody who's going to deal specifically with alcoholism as an addiction. I'm trying to deal with it on a much broader canvas than that.
Thank you.
Yes.
You may have answered my question when you said that the way the cycle of dependent origination is laid out is not completely logical, because I've always had a hard time understanding. I think the first term is ignorance in the cycle, and then consciousness is several steps down, right? So I've always had a hard time understanding how you could be ignorant before you were conscious, or enlightened. Maybe they both require consciousness, right? But I think we said that that the consciousness part doesn't mean consciousness per se, but ordinary day-to-day consciousness.
Yes. We have to remember that the Buddha did not speak English. This used to upset my undergraduate students at Duke. Why do we learn these words in a strange language? And I said, well, I'm sure the Buddha would have spoken English if he could have, but it wasn't invented yet. So until we've had Buddhism in our culture for long enough to have established translations, we have to go back to Sanskrit or something and try to unwrap them. So avidya, I would say, is more unawareness. It's more like stupefaction. It's not like we don't have knowledge of a particular thing, like is the Prime Minister of New Zealand at this moment blowing his nose? I mean, that's not the kind of information that we need to know. And then Vijnana is reflective consciousness. So it's not just the mind. The whole of Buddhism is dealing with the mind in some way, and its notion of the mind is much more sophisticated than we have in the West. Even now we have psychologists which are getting a little bit better at that. Thank you. Did I see anybody else? I have to speak.
Yeah, hi. I was wondering if you could say more about your thoughts of the terminology detachment versus non-attachment. If you can expand upon that a little more.
Yes. It's much misunderstood, even in the Christian tradition. The Alexandrian fathers talk of apatheia, meaning, which is the word apathy in English, like you couldn't care less about anything. But what they mean is that your passions are not so overwhelming that you have to do what they say. You have to follow what they say. So once again, with the Buddhist tradition, detachment is a passion. It is something where we have a strong reaction against, and we cause ourselves suffering because we think I won't be happy if I have that, so I'll try to run away from that, rather than being involved in whatever the moment is and being fully present to that moment and then letting it go. One of the analogies used is you're watching empty boats go under a bridge, and you don't get in the bridge, don't get in the boats. I think another way we could say is if you stand at the side of a highway and watch the cars going past. There's all kinds of different vehicles with all kinds of people in them with all kinds of thoughts and aims and whatever, and you just watch this, you allow it to happen, but you don't get into all of the vehicles in your mind. And then this allows us to be more present to the situation as it is, and to the person that we're actually interacting with.
I know there'll probably be more questions, but we have to stop. So please feel free, because Roger will stick around, right, Roger?
Yes, that's sure. And you can have a look at these books and see if you could if you wanted to purchase them or get them from the library. And there'll be lunch, I think. Hopefully, if people are going for lunch, I would like to do that too. So we can talk over lunch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any announcements?
Well, this coming Saturday is the famous annual Point Reyes hike to Chimney Rock. I have flyers about it. It's an all-day thing where we'll be hiking out to this beautiful wildflower spot and then having like a potluck lunch. So if you want, it's described in the newsletter too. But if you want a flyer about it, I have one. Also, I have a question too. If anybody is interested in going to the Fu Schroeder Gay and Lesbian Retreat in Tassajara in early June, I'd be interested to hear about that. We're coordinating, maybe a carpool or something.
David.
Roger gave me permission to advocate for him a little bit. He's in need of some help in a couple areas. One is to get a new computer that runs Windows XP and that would have a real big high-definition screen so that he could see it. I'm going to help him install, once he gets that, some voice recognition software and also maybe a scanner that does character recognition. So if anyone would volunteer to maybe help him decide on a price, and he could pay for this computer and maybe order it online or however you might do it, go down to Best Buy. I'm not well enough versed in that, but I'll help once it gets going to put some software on. So if anyone would like to maybe talk about it.
CJ?
I'm the potluck coordinator. We have a potluck brunch dinner. I'm too spaced out. Today in Berkeley, over at Marvin's Place. It's 2 Northgate Avenue in Berkeley. I believe there may be some flyers out there. And if you're taking the BART over, which I'll be doing, there'll be a pickup shuttle at 4 p.m. at the North Berkeley BART station. So I invite everybody to come over. If anybody wants to do a potluck, see me.
Okay.
My name is Cass. I'm your co-host with Will Brew today. And so I invite you to stay and enjoy the fellowship of the Sangha or refreshments. If you have some tea, please wash your cup and put it in the drainer. There's a sign-up sheet for the mailing list, both email and snail mail. If you'd like to get the newsletter, please sign up. And there's a Donna bowl right beside the sign-up sheet. Whatever you could afford to help the Sangha meet its expenses, suggested donations of $6 to $8. More if you can, less if you can't. And there will be people probably going to lunch today, so I will, if you'd like to join them, see me and I'll try to connect you with the right people.
And Bill Weber, who's a member of the Sangha and has spoken a number of times, is giving a talk today at the Gay Men's Buddhist Sangha over on Harvard Street at 3 o'clock, 3 to 5. So that would be something.
Some of you know that Howard, of course, has been flying down to take care of his stepfather, who's had a very swift decline, and he died this morning. So Howard had to go back down this morning. So any good wishes in his and his family's direction, I'm sure would be appreciated.
Here's a line in Oscar Wilde's Voice Being Earnest in his Chrism says, in a moment of mental abstraction for which I shall never forgive myself, I forgot to come early to set up. I forgot I was facilitator today until I walked in. So I want to thank David and Cass and whoever else helped set up, and I apologize for any inconvenience that may have caused. Okay, so let's do our closing circle. Oh, I'm sorry, is another question?
No, I just was wondering if there were people new here for yeah.
Oh, thank you. Are there people here for the first time? Yeah, and your name is?
My name's Greg.
Greg, okay, welcome.
My name is Robert.
Robert, welcome.
Did we announce the sign-up sheet for the newsletter?
Yeah, there's a sign-up sheet if anyone hasn't done so. If newcomers want to do so, where you can get the newsletter. Okay, is that all with announcements? Okay, so let's do our closing circle. Roger, here's some thoughts for us.
Do my usual? Yes. May all beings be separated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings be joined to happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings dwell in equanimity with those who are near and those who are far. May all beings find peace, joy, and freedom.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.